The Chicago Bulls struggles have already reached the point where meeting between the players and the coaches have already happened. Can the Bulls season still be saved? Where can the Bulls improve the most? We're going to talk about that all and more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I want to start this episode off. There's been a difficult weekend for the Chicago Bulls in which they lost against the Cleveland Cavaliers on Friday. They lost on Sunday to the Houston Rockets. This was an opportunity to stop two streaks. The Cleveland Cavaliers that are on a historic streak. I think now they're at 15-0 so far in the season. The Houston Rockets came into Chicago on a 5-game winning streak. They're now on a 4-game winning streak. They're now on a 5-game winning streak. And the Chicago Bulls just continue to struggle in new and exciting ways, depending on how you look at exciting, right? The Chicago Bulls in this game against the Houston Rockets yesterday lost by 36 points. They were 4 points away from losing by 40 points. That's 40 points in a basketball game. And when you look at it, it comes down to the same things being the struggles for the Chicago Bulls, and they get louder and more evident every day that goes by. At this point, it's ad nauseum that we're talking about where this team is struggling at. It is like it's flabbergasting how bad the Chicago Bulls have been in certain areas of the game of basketball. And you know that it's been a weekend in which a lot of conversations been made about Josh Giddey and his lack of defense, against the Cleveland Cavaliers, only playing 15 minutes, basically for all intents and purposes, getting benched in that game. And so that started, of course, the think pieces from Bulls fans over the course of the next couple of days. Also over this weekend, Matas Buzelis went down to the G League, scored over 20 points there, got a double-double, came back up to the Bulls, still barely got minutes in a blowout loss. But the thing that is striking this Bulls team so much is when you look at the comments from Coby White and Billy Donovan, right? And this is from your 1A, 1B player and Coby White, however you look at it, one of your best players on the league, definitely one of your top 3 players. On this team. I said in the league, on this team. And then you got your head coach, Billy Donovan, who talked about it clear that, hey, I knew we were going to struggle defensively. I knew that coming into the season. I'm paraphrasing Billy Donovan's comments here. We knew that the defense was going to be a struggle. But the turnovers, the things that we can control are bad, right? When I know that you hate Billy Donovan, I'm telling you right now, Ime Udoka ain't thinking about sending no messages to the Chicago Bulls. He's not thinking. He's out there being the best coach that he is. At the end of the day, nobody, I guarantee you, not many people thought Ime Udoka would turn into as good of a coach as what he has. Now, one could say that goes back to the lack of evaluation that Matt Eberflus and Arturas Karnisovas did. But, Ime Udoka was a finalist for this Bulls position. That was before Billy Donovan came available, and he was the hottest coach on the market. Like, regardless of how we feel about Billy Donovan now, the Bulls went out and got the hottest coach on the market at that time. And I can understand why they got caught up and enamored in that. They were trying to turn around the franchise. Of course, it ended up being the wrong decision, right? But it's more than just Billy. This is more than just Billy Donovan. Yes, he's a big part of it. Make no mistake about it. But this is more than just Billy Donovan. I don't care what percentage you want to put on Billy Donovan because he deserves it no matter how you want to look at it. But this comes down a large part to execution. The execution of this team is so piss poor that it's hard to even blame coaching because I tell you what, I guarantee you there's not a single play in the playbook that calls for 20 turnovers. There's not a single play in the playbook that calls for 80 points given up in the paint. I can guarantee that wholeheartedly, no questions asked. There's not a single play in the playbook, not a single design, not a single scheme that calls for that. Billy is a problem. Make no mistake about it. Billy Donovan, because at the end of the day as well, as a coach, you got to hold yourself to a certain standard. The rotations are bad. How he utilizes players to their strengths is bad at times, but you cannot overlook the simplicity of player execution. The Bulls are not executing the game of basketball well. And I sat here several times over the offseason, before the start of the season, and I sat here and told you guys this was going to be a tough season for the Bulls. And some, I'm not saying all, but there were some that were very loud and adamant that this team would win 40 games to 41 games. And I want to know where those people are now. And this isn't even to be petty. I know I'm Petty Roosevelt, and I have a habit of being petty from time to time, but we got to have a serious conversation over the way that Bulls fans gaslight themselves. It's bad enough that Billy Donovan and AK and Eversley will gaslight us every single time that we get. But the willingness of some Bulls fans to gaslight themselves into overlooking some things that are just clear about this team, it baffles me. It baffles me. You're looking at a team that needed 29 clutch wins last season. I'm sorry, 26 clutch wins last season on a 39-win season. A 39-win season. That team then loses their best clutch player and two of their better defenders and replace them with one-dimensional, one-way players. And I'm sorry, I know people try to gas up Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith is not a good defender at all. I need to be clear and adamant about this. I need everyone to understand this. Jalen Smith is not a good defender. Now, he's more athletic. He's a solid rim protector at times, but he's not a good on-ball defender. He's not a good off-ball defender. He's a good weak side and help defender at times with his blocks and his length, but you replace this, right? And the Bulls we got to seriously start asking themselves, have the Bulls already peaked? And no, for those that are getting ready to type it, let me stop y'all right there. Lonzo Ball isn't saving the Chicago Bulls team. It's not happening. It's not happening. And so we sit in a place once again where we have to look at this Chicago Bulls team and we got to be honest with ourselves about what is about to come down the pipeline for the rest of the way for this team. And I'm here to tell y'all that the key thing is that's going to happen with this team a lot. It's called struggle. And get ready to embrace it because the struggle cometh. So listen, it is what it is. Like, it's bad. Like, and I'm telling y'all now, this is the same thing that I sat here and told Bulls fans, and go back and look in the archives. In the 2020-2021 season, where everybody was caught up in a 9-game winning streak that we barely got by and played some of the worst competition in the NBA, I said then, oh, this is about to get ugly. And people, oh, Haize, what? Why? Are we winning or are we not? Haize, what are we talking about? Why are we saying that it's... Mark my words. By everything holy and unholy, it's about to be a struggle for the Chicago Bulls the rest of the way of the season. The problem with it is that the Bulls have no bag. They run. There's no bag in that. It's running and it's getting lucky if you hit your shots or not. That's where it is. That's where the Chicago Bulls team is right now. If they're hitting their threes, oh, it's going to look great. It's going to look great. It's going to open up the middle of the floor, all those types of things. That's terrible. No, there's nothing. There's a lot of starters that average under 10 points per game. That's not why. That's a symptom of the disease. That's not the disease. The disease is that the Bulls have no bag. The disease is that there's no substance to the Bulls' offense other than running. The starters scoring under 10 points is a symptom of the disease. It's not the disease. I need to be clear on that. And so until this Bulls team is really ready to, and again, this may all be by design. This is why if you look at the last topic for today, the last topic is it's time to get ready for the draft, people. It's time to go ahead and get ready. We got to start our draft analysis early because, listen, it's about to get ugly. Shay, maybe Billy Donovan will be fired. But listen, it's much like at this point, with this roster, you can have Pat Riley, Phil Jackson, and Eric Spoelstra and Steve Kerr all do the fusion dance from Dragon Ball Z, and they could only save this team so much. It would take Jesus, Levante, Christ himself to come down to earth and decide that what he wants to do with his time here is fix the Chicago Bulls for this season, this team to turn around. That's what it would take. And you know what else it's going to take to help this team turn around? It's going to take some better help, and we're going to get into a message from BetterHelp right after this. Appreciate you guys tuning in with us, man, in this stressful season for the Chicago Bulls, man. It has been a tough season for the Bulls, and you cannot deny that. I don't know anybody who would deny that right now. It's been a struggle, but BetterHelp can help with that. And this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Take a moment to say thank you to someone in your life, including your therapist, if that's someone that you need to thank. Guess what? I need to thank Billy Donovan and the Chicago Bulls for making me realize that I do need help with my mental health. This month is all about gratitude. And along with the person I just shouted out in Billy Donovan and the Chicago Bulls, there's another person that we don't think enough. That's ourselves. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we are trying our best to make sense of everything. And in this crazy world, that isn't easier. Here's a reminder to send some thanks to people in your life, including yourself. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist or switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Guys, all jokes aside, we're in the high, seasonal depression months. It gets dark at 6 p.m. now, and I don't know about you guys, but it's definitely been affecting my mood. The little bit of sunlight that we get, especially with me being recording in here all the time. Make sure you guys are doing a good job of taking care of yourself. Remember, seeking therapy is not a sign that something's wrong. It's more a sign that you're trying to keep things right. Let gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp. HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, Bulls fans, man, it's going to be a tough season. It is going to be a tough season, and I am warning you and telling you guys about this right now. But with that said, let's flip it and talk a little bit about the positive, right? You guys know one thing that I always try to do, as much as I'm going to complain about stuff, call out bad stuff, I like to talk about things from all sides. So let's spend some time talking about where can things improve for this Chicago Bulls team, right? And I think that there are some things right now that are very controllable for this Bulls team, right? Very controllable. Turnovers. That's controllable by the Bulls. If you look at the Bulls right now, sometimes we suffer from overpassing. Sometimes we also suffer from not moving without the ball, which is always going to be a thing. But Kobe White and Zach LaVine, they do this kind of the most. It's not just to call them out, but they'll penetrate, which is really good. They'll collapse the defense, but it's almost like they decide to pass out at the last minute when they're almost surrounded. So the turnovers have to be one of the first things that I would really like to see the Chicago Bulls team try to get together is the turnovers. We're allowing over 20 points in the Chicago Bulls losses off turnovers alone, right? Even in last night's game against the Houston Rockets, the Bulls didn't really turn. I think we had 13 turnovers on that game, which is still more than you necessarily want to see, but it's not the 20-plus turnovers that we've had in some of the other games. But the problem is they still got over 20 points off turnovers, and when you pair that with 80 points in the paint, which we'll get into here in a second, that's really difficult to overcome. So the Bulls have to get to a place of getting these turnovers together. And that is a controllable aspect of your team, whether it's overpass. Of course, there's going to be some steals. There's going to be some times where, you get turnovers because the other team is playing really physical or they have length. But we're seeing this Bulls team consistently, regardless of who the opponent is, give up over 20 points off turnovers very consistently. It's hard to win in those type of scenarios and instances. The Bulls have to be better about that. So definitely hoping that the Bulls can get better and control that. The other part is the effort defensively. This team is already going to have some shortcomings defensively. The points in the paint, we're always going to be a team that gives up a lot of points in the paint. We just don't have the pressure because it's not just the interior. It's not just, I had a conversation with somebody the other day. It was like, well, we just need a big man. And it's like, yeah, but what does that do about, I mean, it can help some, but a lot of the points that we're giving up in the paint is from weak perimeter defense and rotations defensively. When the Bulls are forced into switches, you might as well, it's barbecue chicken. Now, part of that is the lack of defense and rim protection that we have, but part of that also is that we have some of the worst pick and roll defensive IQ that I've ever seen. That I've ever seen. I've literally seen 8 bums off the street, some that didn't even own tennis shoes, have better pick and roll awareness than what the Chicago Bulls show consistently. And no, it's not just Josh Giddey. Yes, Josh Giddey's bad, but it's not just Josh Giddey. And one of the problems of that is that we don't communicate on the defensive side of the ball. That is a big part of this. Now, you got to have basketball IQ to communicate, but I think that communication piece, it's not going to completely solve everything, but it is going to help, right? You got to help your guys out. And this Bulls team is not helping each other out. We're not doing that. We have to be a more connected team on that defensive side of the ball. And defense, a lot of defense is effort. Not all of it, because there's a lot of people who give effort defensively and they're trash defensively. But the effort has to be there. We have to fight over screens. We have to communicate to go under or over. Like the Bulls team, they look like a bunch of middle schoolers out there defending sometimes, and we have to be better in that aspect of things. And for that credit, Billy Donovan has to better manage rotations. I know it's been a heavy conversation point here where I've gone over the rotations that have worked, the lineups that have worked the best for the Chicago Bulls. And I have a serious question and some serious doubt is that if I'm having more conversations about Bulls lineups that are working than the actual coaching staff is having. That's a concern. Out of your most played lineups, let's just get this together. The Bulls' 3 most used lineups. So the 286 possessions, 104 possessions, and 78 possessions. Your most used lineups, those are your top 3 used lineups, all have a negative point differential, negative 5.1, negative 0.8, and negative 44.4. Your next one is negative 2.3. Your one after that is negative 31.3. You don't get into a positive Bulls lineup until you're into their 6th most used lineup. 6. That means we are using 5 lineups more regularly that all have a net negative. That's a problem. That's either a problem of personnel, that's a problem of coaching, or it's a combination of the two. When your 5 most used lineups, all give up more points than they score, how do you expect to win basketball games? Where does that turn around for you at? And your first lineup that has a positive point differential is Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, Jalen Smith. What does that tell you? That's 1 starter. Your best lineup has 1 starter in it. One starter. I'm sure that's an anomaly. I'd have to go through all 30 teams in the NBA, but if you mean to tell me out of your most used lineups, before you get to 1 that has a positive point differential, it's 1 starter and all bench players? How do you expect to turn that around? How? Explain that to me. That's crazy. Matter of fact, out of the Bulls' best 10 lineups, their most used 10 lineups, there's only 2 that are positive, and both have 1 starter. No, 2 starters. I'm sorry. The other one has 2 starters. So we have the one of Kobe, Ayo, Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, and Jalen Smith. And then the next lineup that you get to that has a positive point differential is Ayo, Levine, Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, Nikola Vucevic. 2 starters in that lineup. So out of your best 10 lineups, only 2 are positive, and those 2 lineups have a combined 3 starters in them. What are we doing? What is this team? It's ugly, is what this team is. And when you start getting into the weeds of looking at some of this stuff, then you'll understand why Haize has the outlook that we've peaked already. That's it. It's done. We're going to get some fun wins over the course of the season. We're going to have some surprising victories at times. But when you look at sustained success for this team, it's not coming. It's not happening. It's not coming down the pipeline. It's just not happening. And we got to come to that realization. We got to realize where this Bulls team is. And people thought that this team was going to win 40 games. I laugh in the face of that. But next up, we're going to finish this team off. Finish this team off. They're finishing themselves off. We're going to finish this episode off in discussing, is it time to really start getting ready and focus on the draft? We're going to get into all that right after a message from FanDuel. All right, Bulls fans, man, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets. I've been trying to stress to you guys for a while now that being able to get all the information that you need to make an informed bet on the same page where you place your bets is just a leg up that a lot of the other sports books aren't giving you. You get all the information that you need to make a smart and informed bet. And hopefully that helps you guys get better bets in. Just visit FanDuel.com today to get started. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Bulls fans. So before we get ready to wrap up this episode, man, I just need to get into this last thing here. And I got a call over on Chicago Bulls Central today, and it really made me realize that, not to say that this season is completely over. Like I said, there's going to be some fun to be had this season. There's going to be some fun performances. I'm sure Josh Giddey's going to have a triple-double at some point. Kobe's going to drop a 40-burger at some point this year. It's going to happen, right? It's definitely going to happen. Zach is probably going to drop a 50-piece at some point this season. It just feels like it's going to come at some point. It's probably going to come in like a 20-point loss, though. Not on Zach LaVine, but because of the rest of the team. But it's really time to start not even just looking toward the draft, but focusing on the future, right? I talked about earlier in this episode how Matas Buzelis went down in the G League for one game and dominated that level of competition, which he should do. Matas Buzelis is better than G League competition. Adama Sanogo is better than G League competition. They just should dominate down there, right? But it gave a glimpse of what the future could look like when Matas gains some more kind of rhythm, when he gains a little bit more shooting touch, when he gains some more confidence at the NBA level. But outside of that, the Bulls have this pick that's top 10 protected to the San Antonio Spurs, meaning that if it falls anywhere but in the top 10, it goes to the Spurs. Right now, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll bring this up real quick just to verify my own thoughts on this one. Right now, the Chicago Bulls have the 8th best chances in the lottery. That's right now. There's a lot of season left to be played. But more than likely, unless both the 9th and 10th team end up at the top of the lottery, the Bulls will probably keep their pick, right? And it is this season, as much as AK and Eversley really try to sell us on a competitive team once again, this team is all about the future. It just is. Everything about this team feels like it. It's geared towards the future. I'm not saying that Billy Donovan is necessarily developing right if we're geared towards the future, but this is definitely a team where their mindset, their eyes should all be on what the future holds for this team. How much of the future of this team is here, right? It's going to be here. It's already on this roster. How much is salvageable from these players? How much has the coaching and the losing over the last few years also ruined the confidence of those players, right? So at the end of this day, man, this team is there's more. We hope, right? There's not much in the current future this season. There's really not much to look forward to. There's just not, right? This Bulls team is not going to magically turn it around. We're not all of a sudden going to start looking like a better team. We're not going to be a top 6 seed. We may not even compete for a play-in spot. The East is getting better. The East is getting healthier, and some of the sleeping giants in the East are going to start waking up here sooner rather than later, which is going to push the Bulls further back in where they are right now. Right now, they are the 11th seed. The Bulls on the season have a negative 8.1 point differential. That is the point differential of a 30-win team. A 30-win team. So that's where we are. That's the lot in life for this Bulls team. That's where we stand, and that's what we're going to be. So it is time to start looking forward to things, because that's where the brightest spots is, the future. And part of that is hopefully keeping this draft, this top 10 draft pick. Now, I'm not going to allow myself to start thinking the Bulls are going to get lucky enough to draft Cooper Flagg. I'm just not going to think that. I'm not going to think that. I refuse to allow myself to get my hopes up in that way. But I will say this. There's some really good. Kaman Malik, it looks really good in this draft. Hugo Gonzalez still looks really good potentially in this draft. Asa Newell, a little bit outside the range, but he still looks really good so far. So let's see what the future holds for this team, man. And we'll see. We'll see. But that's my time for today, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys are tuned in. You can follow us at Locked On Bulls. You can follow me personally at CEO Haize, man. Also, make sure you guys check out the Locked On Bulls daily newsletter. You can go to lockedondaily.com and sign up for a newsletter that's going to be delivered to your inboxes every single morning from me to get you guys started on everything you need to know about the Chicago Bulls, man. But thank you guys for tuning in. We are a member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. We can be found on every podcasting app and platform of your choice, as well as Amazon Fire TV, the Odyssey app, and more. So make sure you guys are in tune with us for that. But love you guys. Go Bulls. See Red. We'll be live tonight after the game. Peace.